It's good to see our numbers growing. Hi, everyone. It's the top of the hour, so we're going to get started. My name is Rebecca Brown. I work with the NNLM. I am not your presenter or your host really today. I'm just here to orient you to WebEx. Your chat box may or may not be open at the moment, but look for, depending on your setup, should have a chat, the word chat in the bottom right of your screen. You can open that up. If you have a comment or a question during today's session, if you would send it to everyone, and that way, not just the speaker, everyone will see it and it won't get missed. I'm going to put a link to captioning in again. That's available. That will open in another browser tab. And we are recording this meeting and we'll get that out to folks eventually. It takes us about a month to get that edited. So I'm going to turn this over to April Wright, who is the host today.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for coming to our webinar today. My name is April Wright, and I am the Environmental Health Program Specialist in Region 1 of the NNLM. And the NNLM is comprised of 7 regions, each with a regional medical library. And we are in Region 1. You can see we serve the states of Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. So today, our guest speaker is Dan Wilson. Dan is the Associate Director for Collections and Library Services at the University of Virginia Health Sciences Library. From 2007 to 2016, he was the coordinator for the NNLM National Emergency Preparedness and Response Initiative. In that role, he facilitated several training programs and engaged in engagement opportunities around emergency preparedness for libraries, communities, CBHOs, and emergency planners. Dan has worked with state library agencies in South Carolina, New Jersey, Montana, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Maryland, and Virginia. Everyone, please welcome Dan, and thank you, Dan, for being with us today.
Thanks, April, and hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here and to have this opportunity to go over some things that should help you to improve your library's ability to respond to a sudden disaster. Hence the name, Less Ostrich, More Owl. And what I'm working off of is something called the ostrich complex. And hopefully by the end of this hour, you will have some steps in place that you'll be able to help prevent this complex from happening. And the definition of the ostrich complex is that it's a disruption of a decision maker's knowledge management processes that results in a paralysis of active leadership or state of inertia with a subsequent distinct negative effect on the outcome of a specific operation. And you may have experienced this in the past, either yourself. I've kind of gone into this state a couple of times when something really sudden happens. You just kind of freeze. Another common way is the deer in the headlights kind of look following some kind of major disruption. And so what we're going to do is talk about ways that you can prevent this in your library. And we're going to go after that by addressing 5 steps. And the first step is to identify and plan responses for emergency situations that strike with little or no warning. The second step is to plan a decision-making process for each situation. And then we're going to exercise that planning. And then a very important step too is to commit to doing an after action review. And then finally, maybe the most fun, hopefully, of all of these is to buddy up with other libraries, because it's important to be in kind of a forum where you're all sharing ideas, you're all sharing lessons learned and things like that. And so at the end of my presentation, April's going to come back and talk about some things that NNLM can help with, can facilitate. And one of those is helping to develop a buddy system with other libraries. So all five steps are predicated on creating a safer environment for your staff and your patrons. You might think of where you are now with your library. A lot of libraries are back in normal operations, and in many places staff are coming back. And so we're seeing the library return kind of in many ways to the state before the pandemic. Of course, this may change as the pandemic changes, but this is a good time if you haven't thought about it for a while, if you've been thinking all about pandemic, which we have been, it's a good time to start thinking about your library space, those that are in your library space, and creating a safer environment for those. So step one is to plan for sudden emergency situations. And this varies from library to library. You probably have a good idea about what your emergency situations are based on experience that you've had in the past. Or you could talk to your local emergency planners and they can help you with this type of planning. So the first thing is to identify the sudden emergency situations that may pop up in your library. And it's important to aim for succinctness to promote muscle memory. And your goal is to reduce the number of decisions an employee needs to make during an emergency. Again, your goal is to reduce the number of decisions an employee needs to make during an emergency. Therefore, you're aiming for succinctness and you're promoting muscle memory. And if you're not familiar with muscle memory, it's a phrase that's used so that instead of having to read about what to do, it's just built into you. It's built into the way that you handle your business. So if something sudden happens, your muscle memory will just take over. And so you don't have to worry about what am I supposed to do in this type of situation, because you've developed a plan and you've developed a testing strategy so that through the repetition, you have built up muscle memory. And finally, you're not creating a policy and procedures manual. This is totally outside of that realm. This is specifically developing succinct plans for emergency situations. My recommendation is to start your planning by focusing on 3 of your most dangerous situations. Again, you can either do this from experience, from what you've had, or you can ask your emergency planners or your first responders to see which are your 3 most dangerous situations. And here at UVA, again, April said that, but I'll reiterate. I'm here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I work at the Health Sciences Library at the University of Virginia. And so what I'm going to do is talk a lot about the planning that we've had and how we've addressed some of these situations. So a lot of this is the background information and experience that I've had. I manage the service desk, and so I have a good experience with the issues connected to the service desk and these types of emergency situations. So one of the first ones that we look at, and this is in no particular order, the three, a tornado. And if you have tornadoes, and you can see on the screen, you can see where the tornado tracks are. And as we know, most of tornadoes are in the Midwest and down into the southern states. But you can see that the mid-Atlantic states has them well, all up into New England and west of the Mississippi. So if you have any experience at all with tornadoes, a tornado is a good emergency situation to develop plans around. And the nice thing about a tornado, you often do get a little bit of a warning, and so you can plan according to that. And this is from our page that we have our plans on. And basically, a tornado comes in two forms. One is a watch. There's usually a tornado watch that's listed for your area. And during a watch, you're monitoring the weather reporting stations online. If you have a weather radio, which we have, you have the weather radio on, just waiting to see if the watch turns into a warning. Highly recommend that, and I'm sure many of you have on your phones, your phones will be able to go off with an alert if you register with your local emergency planning area. And so when a warning or comes across, you will hear it on your phone. And so here's our planning. Again, we're trying to be as succinct as possible to promote muscle memory. And during a watch, we're just monitoring. But whenever a warning is listed, if a tornado warning is listed, here's our procedures. And we have an intercom, so we have an advantage there. It's easy for us to announce to the users in the library. So we announce via intercom that a tornado warning has been issued for Charlottesville. Please come to the lobby and we will lead you to a safe location. And everybody at the service desk knows that that safe location is down the stairs to the basement and the hallway near historical collections. And so there should be no doubt, from anybody working at the service desk or connected with the service desk to know what to do if a tornado warning is put in place. Again, we announce via intercom, a tornado warning has been issued for Charlottesville. Please come to the lobby and we will lead you to a safe location. Earthquake. 10 years ago, actually to almost 10 years ago to this date, we had an earthquake about 40 miles east of here. It was known as the Mineral Earthquake. Before that earthquake had happened, we talked very little about earthquakes here in Charlottesville. But that event really changed our planning. And so suddenly, earthquakes became one of our top three emergency situations that we planned for. And you can see this map, and you can see by that map where the highest risk of earthquakes are. And my guess is a lot of the viewers of this webinar are either in the yellow, orange, or red area. If you're in the green, you should be thinking about it also because there's always that potential. So again, earthquake. We've identified earthquake as a possible sudden situation. What's the response? Drop, cover, and hold on. And we didn't know that. We didn't know that 10 years ago because we didn't think about earthquakes. And so we had people responding to the earthquake in many different ways. And some stayed in their office, some sought cover. Some people went out into the library and tried to get patrons out, and it was just a real variety of responses. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we are responding in a consistent manner. And fortunately, it's a standard across the United States that if there's an earthquake, you drop, cover, and hold on. And we add 2 hours. Do not evacuate the library until shaking has stopped and there are no dangers. And when we had the earthquake here 10 years ago, there were down power lines and there was a broken gas line up on Main Street and things like that. So just a couple of things to consider. But the key thing is, what is that muscle memory? What takes place when the building starts to shake? And that is drop, cover, and hold on. And then the third one is an active shooter. And you can see on the screen, there's a chart that says active shooter incidents in the United States between 2000 and 2018 by location. And you can see commerce, you can see education, open space, and government. So you know where you're in. My guess is most of the viewers of this webinar either in education or in government through public libraries. So it's a good chunk of the pie that we're looking at. It's an unfortunate situation that we have to face and we have to plan for. And again, this is another one of those very sudden, frightful situations that without training and without repetition of that training and without being succinct as possible, there's a likelihood of that ostrich complex to kick in, and people are not going to be able to respond in a safe manner. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is to present a little exercise to everybody. And what I have on the left is some text that I took from, I think, Homeland Security from somewhere. And this is text that talks about surviving during an active shooter. And what I'd like everybody to do is just read over that text at the left and then just make some wording as succinct as possible in order to share the most important information, again, while promoting muscle memory. So let's take a few minutes and just look through that and see what information there is most critical and what you would keep for your succinct plan and what you might take out of that plan. So I'm going to just pause for a couple minutes so you can take a look at that. And feel free to make comments in the chat. I really do want this to be as interactive as possible as we go through it. So again, we're looking at text of how to survive a shooter, an active shooter situation, and we're seeing if we can get it as succinct as possible for training. And somebody puts in the chat, run, hide, fight. And they said that's been drilled into our heads, and that's absolutely true. It's just like drop, cover, and hold on. Um, Things do change as things go along, but I agree. You know, it's still run, hide, and fight, which is the way to look at it. Now, based on your library, you know, you're going to have to talk about, you know, where you run, where you hide, and the whole fighting thing. But just as you're looking through it, and yeah, don't stop for the mask. I thought that was interesting too. Whoever was writing this obviously was writing it during the pandemic situation. And you know, if you have staff that might stop and go back for their masks, then that might be information that you put out there as well. But again, the most succinct that you can get for this type of situation is run, hide, and fight.
Dan, this is Rebecca.
Yep.
There was a comment a little earlier when you were talking about earthquakes. It says, who determines the no dangers in an earthquake? Is it that and all clear from the institution, etc.?
Yes, I would, to be honest with you, I would wait to get word from the institution about whether there are dangers or not. Of course, you can't prevent people from leaving your library, but you can share information. And in that situation, we waited. We waited until we got that information. We heard about the broken gas line. We heard about the power lines. And so we were at least able to alert our patrons of the situation. But I think a lot of people, and I shouldn't say a lot of people because I don't know that for sure, but I think the tendency is to get out of the building, but following an earthquake, but that's not always the best route to take. And so, as with all these other ones, all these other planning that we're going to talk about, it's best to vet your plans with the emergency with an emergency agency, with the police, with the fire, you probably have some kind of relationship with somebody, a first responder, and they can look over your plans and they can discuss your plans to give you a little more context, to give you a little more background to it as well. But the key thing with the earthquake is drop cover and hold on. So thanks for the question. So I'm including on this slide just some other of our plans that we have. Again, trying to be succinct. If we have a power outage and if it's dark and the power is off for longer than 15 minutes, we initiate our closing procedures. It's always important to check elevators, and we really stress to our service desk team, and we talk about in circulation service desk team their importance, but we talk about the importance of checking elevators, and we talk about the importance of looking for patrons that may need assistance during these emergency situations. Medical emergencies, call 911. Announce on the intercom that medical assistance is needed in the whatever location it is. And it's also on our plan, but also it's worked into muscle memory that the closest AED device is just out in the hall, down the hall a little bit. So everybody at the service desk should know without even thinking or looking where that closest AED is. Fire, smoke, call 911, pull the fire alarm near exit if necessary. Closest fire extinguisher, hallway near staff mailboxes. So everybody at your service desk team, everybody in your library staff should know where the closest fire extinguisher is. Shelter in place, we've identified the staff lounge as the place that we shelter in place. Bomb threat, very similar to what we've been seeing with the checklist. And then finally, hazmat incident, follow instructions from emergency officials. So again, any of these are kind of, that could be quite kind of sudden, and so we plan accordingly in our plans. So step two, so the first step is to look at those sudden emergency situations, come up with a plan that's succinct, that you're able to get some training in to ensure muscle memory. The step two, and probably one of my favorite steps, is to plan the decision-making process. So you have these plans in place, but it's really important to discuss where the decision making happens for each of those. And on this slide, you see one photograph of one drop in a pond or in a piece of water. Sometimes these emergency situations only impact one person. It could be one person at the service desk. And an example might be that emergency medical situation. Other types of situations, like an earthquake, impact a lot of people at the same time. And the slide to the left of that is raindrops falling simultaneously. And so you have to plan for that as well. And then you see the chain at the bottom of that picture, and that's probably the most important step of all of them, that you really have to plan for your weakest link, that you can't apply the ostrich uh, syndrome and say, well, it probably won't happen at this time because we don't have ample staff to be able to handle that situation. You really have to plan thoroughly at all times for all people that might need to respond to that situation. And I borrowed a organizational chart from the Aurora Public Library to help illustrate the importance of decision making. So this is Aurora Public Library, and there's the library board of directors at the top, followed by the director, and then you get down to the main library, and then at the bottom line is circulation services. Now, when you're talking about emergency planning and emergency responses, your circulation services team is probably the most important team that's in your library to handle these, because that's your public facing team. They're the ones that are going to get the information probably before anybody else does. And so when you're looking at who has decision-making authority, it's important to not put any space between the circulation desk and the decision maker. So ideally, you would be able to train the service desk team to make all of these decisions. So when something happens, everybody at the service desk team has been trained, has been drilled to the point that they have muscle memory, that they know how to execute all of these plans without really thinking much about it. It just becomes a natural execution. If you don't have that ability, then make sure that the service desk, again, the space between the service desk team and the decision maker is there's no space in between. So that decision maker better be available, either right behind the service desk or very, very readily available for that situation when something happens. If there's a space between the circulation desk and the decision maker, you're going to have issues because there's going to be a gap, and any gap in response can really cause problems. So when you're thinking about your decision-making authority, please think about that service desk team and how can you get that service desk team to the point that they can make these decisions so that there isn't any space between the service desk and the decision maker. If that's not the case, make sure that you have the decision maker readily available to that service desk team. So if we look at a tornado situation where we have the tornado watch, well, there's not a lot of decision making that needs to be done at that point. But once that warning comes by, decisions have to be made immediately in how the plan is executed. That medical emergency, when that comes to the desk, it needs to execute immediately. Fire and smoke. Fire and smoke is one of those interesting ones. If it's a raging fire, it's pretty easy to make that decision. In some cases, somebody smells smoke or they might see smoke coming out of a ballast. And so there might be a decision-making process that can happen. You have the benefit of some time in that situation, but make sure that that decision maker is there for the circulation desk team, because if that decision maker isn't there, it creates a lot of stress among the team members and it delays the response. Earthquake, it's one of those responses that everybody needs to be aware of. That's the drops, the many drops, simultaneous drops. And the decision making with an earthquake usually comes post-earthquake. So who helps with those decision makings following the earthquake? Again, don't have space between the service desk team and the decision maker. And then finally, the shooter. Shooter affects everybody, and just make sure that everybody is able to respond to that. So that's the step two. Again, it's deciding where the decision-making authority is going to take place for each one of those responses. And the goal is not to put any space between the circulation desk team and the decision maker. So step three is where your muscle memory comes in, because that's where you exercise your plan. And in order to exercise your plan, you want to do something that is called a tabletop exercise. And you can do this for each one of those the emergency situations. And I'll just read to you on this slide what a tabletop exercise is. A tabletop exercise is a facilitated discussion about what your organization would do in response to a disaster. The exercise leads participants through a simulated disaster scenario and prompts them to examine their plans, policies, and procedures without disrupting the work environment. It allows for a facilitated discussion of roles, procedures, and responsibilities in the context of a simulated emergency scenario. So if you haven't done a tabletop exercise before, this is a great opportunity to start working that into your workplace. And it's actually a lot of fun, but you want to make sure that you have all the participants there that need to be there. And that would be your circulation staff. That would mean your decision makers, your leadership, and any partners that you might have, with emergency responders or anything like that. You can get all of them together. I know the emergency response community is all about helping with facilitating tabletop exercises. And if you reached out to your police or to your fire department, I'm certain that they would be more than happy to come over and help you with tabletop exercises. Again, tabletop exercises are what you do to help with the drill process to make sure all procedures are in place so then when that situation happens, you're able to respond quickly to whatever situation is happening. And so I'm going to work everybody into the next little exercise that we're going to have is we're going to do a little tabletop exercise. And again, this is just a little bitty piece of what an actual tabletop exercise might entail. But just to give you a little background information, so we're doing a tabletop exercise. We're all sitting in a room and we're doing a tabletop exercise of what to do with a tornado situation. And the background information is a tornado watch. The National Weather Service issues a tornado watch when weather conditions indicate an increased risk for severe weather that may be capable of producing a tornado. And it recommends to tune into NOAA weather radio, local radio, or television for information. And then a tornado becomes in when the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning when a tornado has been sighted or indicated by weather radar. And of course, your plan of action is to take shelter immediately. And just some little tidbit of information that I got from this NOAA document called Tornadoes 101. Casualties and injuries occur when people do not or cannot get to adequate shelter quickly. On average, tornado warnings are issued 13 minutes before the storm hits. In general, your goal for taking shelter is to put as many walls as possible between yourself and wind-borne debris. So here we go. So here's a tabletop exercise. Let's say your area, and let's make this live. Let's say it's happening right now. Your area has been under a tornado watch over the past 3 hours. As a result, you and your staff are on alert in case the watch turns into a warning. Suddenly, your cell phone's alert feature goes off. A tornado has been spotted in your area. How do you get everyone in your library to a safe space in less than 13 minutes? So everybody, please think about that right now. So the alert goes off. Hopefully you've identified a space in your library, and if not, that's something that you can do. But you have a safe space in your library. How do you get them there in 13 minutes? And so the 13 minutes, the clock is ticking. And so again, this is why we want to eliminate that space between the circulation desk team and the decision makers. So things have to happen immediately. And again, in our library, we're immediately going to the intercom and we're saying that a tornado warning has been posted for the Charlottesville area. Please come to the lobby and we will lead you to a safe location. And we can do that in 13 minutes. So just be thinking about that. And the other thing you should be thinking about is how would you handle any injuries? We have a little first aid kit, and it's probably something that we should be checking um, uh, more often than we are. And so this is something that would go and would happen when we have that tabletop exercise. We would want to check to make sure that we have some things around that we would be able to handle some type of emergency. And I do see in the chat, the best thing to do, another thing you can always do is to ask them to move away from windows and doors. That's certainly something that you can do as well. What we try to do is move them to a safe location, which again is the basement in our health sciences library. How do you know if all staff in the building are safe? Do you have a way of keeping track of who's in the building? Do you have a meeting place that everybody would gather at following this type of safe situation. I assume the expectation would be for everybody to meet in that safe space. And while everybody's down in that safe space, you can see and make sure that everybody is safe and accounted for. And the last thing that I want to point out, and again, this is just a bit of a piece of what might be from an actual tabletop exercise is, are you able to get immediate contact with your library director? And then there's a typo there. Let's just say the library director. So right now, if you had to immediately contact the library director, would you be able to get right through to that person? And that's something that everybody needs to be thinking about, because for some of these situations where things are going to happen, usually after the situation, some big decisions are going to have to be made. And it's important that you get immediate access to that primary decision maker. And so if you have steps in place, like your service desk team, your circulation staff, are they able to contact the library director immediately? Do you use texting? How do you go about doing that? So again, this is all part of determining the decision-making process, but that access, the access from the circulation team to decision makers is just so critical. And please spend some time thinking about that and working that process through.
Hey, Dan,
Yep.
there was a question a little bit earlier that was, just asking for clarification when you're saying, kind of closing the gap between decision makers and other staff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when something is happening, right, there, that means instead of having to look for a decision maker when it's happening,
Right. Exactly.
everybody
When
can make the
something's
decision.
happening. And
Thank you.
that's kind of where we're looking at the circulation desk team, because the circulation desk team is the one that's making, actually performing the response. And if you have a situation where you don't, let's say you have a lot of students working, or you have a lot of volunteers that are working your circulation desk, and it's impossible for you to train everybody to be able to respond accurately and appropriately, then that's where you really have to make sure that that gap between those workers, where you can't expect them to carry out these responsibilities in the manner that you are able to, or your other staff are able to, make sure that that gap does not exist between those workers and, let's say, the circulation supervisor or whoever would be making those decisions. You just don't want to leave those people hanging out there in the event that something major is happening and they don't have the ability to make those decisions about how to respond. April, are there any other questions that I should answer?
Um, there's one that says, how do you determine a safe spot in the building you're in?
Yes. How do you determine a safe spot in the building you are in? The best way to do that is to contact your fire department or your police department, and they will come over and they will determine it. Now, there are a couple of different places. You are looking for a safe space for a tornado, which might be different from a safe space for a hazmat incident, which might be different for a safe space for a shooter incident. And so when you're looking for that safe space, it might change from incident to incident, which is why we call the fire department, get somebody from the fire department over, why we get somebody from the police department to talk about this. And so that when you're planning, you know exactly where people will go to a safe space. If it's a tornado, where is the safe space in the event of a hazmat incident? It probably isn't the same space as the tornado situation. But an hour with the police or the fire department will clear all of these spaces up, and then you'll be all set.
Okay, I think
We're all
we're
caught up.
good. Yeah, there's one more.
Okay.
How can solo librarians apply the steps, particularly for the tabletop exercise?
How can a solo library particularly? Okay, this is where I would contact, if you're a solo library, this is where I'd contact the police or the fire department, and they will come over and they will work these through. The advantage of a solo library is that it's you, and you should be able to handle these after you get everything vetted. Now, you can't always be there, and so there are situations, I'm sure, that you are more vulnerable. There are times of vulnerability that we're all more vulnerable. And those are the kinds of things that again, your police or your fire department will more than happy come over and work these out with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
We're all caught up with the questions now.
okay,
Thank you.
okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so just to summarize then, step one is to look at the situations that are most likely to happen, emergency situations that might catch you off guard. The second step is to look at the planning, how you the decision making planning, how the decision making works within those. And the third one is to exercise, and we talked about exercising using a tabletop scheme that you can do. And then the fourth step is to commit to conducting an after action review. And this is something that really is critical for any kind of planning in the emergency preparedness world, is following some kind of emergency response that you look at what was expected to happen, what actually happened, what worked and what was challenging, and most importantly, what can be improved next time. And underneath that chart, you can see after action review. Hold the after action review immediately following the event. We strive to do it within 7 days following the event, where everybody remembers what happened. You have one facilitator, and you go around the room and you talk about the situation. Everybody has an equal voice. So again, there's your circulation desk team, your supervisors, your administrators, all sitting around the table. Everybody has an equal voice. Everybody takes a turn. There's a lot of listening involved with after action reviews, and there can not be any interruptions. Everybody has to feel very comfortable and feel very willing to share whatever they feel needs to be shared. No blame. There's no blame that's ever part of an after action review, and nobody is right or wrong. And then make it quick, aim for less than 30 minutes, and then write down the key points. And then from the after action review, you are able then to, and I'll go through these again, what was expected to happen, what actually happened, what worked, what was challenging, and what can be improved next time. And so if adjustments need to be made to your planning, then that's the time to make adjustments to your planning. And so actually, when you have these emergency situations, as difficult as they might be, they are very helpful to keep you sharp in the way you respond to these emergency situations. If everybody could just chat, has anybody done, and let's say the question is, have you done an after action review, and again, also known as a hot wash, in the past year for any event? If you want to just chat to everybody, if you've done an after action review and what it was for.
I actually have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The after action review, someone wants clarification. This would be after an actual emergency or after a tabletop?
Good point. Thanks for the clarification. It'd be after the actual emergency. So let's say you have in fact, we had a tornado warning here a couple weeks ago. If we had executed the plan, then the next day I would have gotten the team together and we would talk about what happened, what was challenging, and what could we do to improve. So it's after the actual event. The tabletop exercise is just a simulated event. You will be learning things from the tabletop exercise as well, and that's an opportunity to make adjustments to your plan before an actual emergency situation happens. So both of these are important. Both the tabletop exercise and the after action reviews are opportunities for you to identify areas that need to improve before the next situation.
Okay, there was another question. How important is it to have plans, lists, contacts on paper and not electronically?
Okay, that would be part two of the webinar, and the part two is would be doing this what I've been talking about for years now is a one-page plan. And so after you're able to really get a good hold on this type of emergency situation and how to respond to this, we put it on paper, and the paper that we put it on is called the one-page plan. And April, we could work out some type of a webinar in the future so that you can see how to document what we're talking about today into a larger plan, which is your one-page plan. And that could be on paper. In my wallet right now, I have our one-page plan. And so I can just take that plan out and I can see exactly what needs to happen. Some of our staff prefer it electronically, and so I share a PDF of that one-page plan with everybody, and they can have that on their cell phone so they can pull it up at any time. But what's important is that we're sharing information about emergency situations, and we do that through what's known as a one-page plan.
Okay, some of the comments in the chat. Um, let's see, Denise says that I am a cert. We do these all the time, but not one at the library. And talking about the after action review. And Jean says that they should have done one after a pipe broke, spilling antifreeze over the print journals.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually Linda asked, did anyone do one after the COVID shutdown? That was unforeseen and could have been dangerous. And Emily says, our institution was hit by a ransomware attack. We had zero access to email and electronic files. I strongly suggest a paper copy be kept somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Kendra Perry, our campus safety department has a flip chart that is posted on the wall in each classroom or department with procedures for several types of emergencies. And each section is clearly labeled with the type of emergency so that you can flip it quickly.
Nice. And
Oh, and
since somebody
I'm sorry,
mentioned
go ahead.
CERT, CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. And I highly suggest if you're interested in this, if you want to start getting more information about how your community handles these types of disasters, to look into your local CERT, CERT, if you have one of those in your area. I'm sorry, April, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm glad you said that because I didn't know what it was. um, Actually, and Linda asked, one page for each disaster or one page for all three most likely
Actually, it's
or
one
all likely.
page, and that one page has one column. In that one column of the 7 or 8 columns on the one page deals with these types of situations. So there's a lot more involved in the one-page plan. The one-page plan deals a lot with service continuity. So it talks about if something happens to the library, how do we keep our electronic journals going? How do we keep access to different things like that? So So that's more, that one-page plan is a lot more than what we're talking about today, but a lot less than what you would have if you have a big manual for emergency procedures. And yes, there
Mm,
is a sample for a one-page plan, and I'll show you where to get that.
okay. And Tina asked, is there a cert specifically for libraries?
No,
Um,
but my
no?
understanding is that CERT will work. Different CERTs, I know the CERT in Charlottesville worked with the library at the University of Virginia, contacted them, and they set up basic CERT training with the library staff. And so, again, it varies from place to place, but you contact CERT and see what they say. Okay, let me go to the step 5. We'll get step 5 in first. And this might be the most valuable of all the 5 steps. And I say this because it's very easy to kind of just let these things go by unless you're having, these types of situations, unless you're having emergency situations, or unless you're really, really good about having tabletop exercises that involve your staff, that involve emergency responders in the area, it might be really easy to just kind of lax off in these. And so if you don't keep your planning up to date, you might run into a situation. So I think it's critical at this point, and maybe fun at the same time, is to partner with another library. And in the past, buddy libraries, we call them buddy libraries, they were created to provide backup response following a disaster. And probably maybe 10, 15 years ago, the University of Virginia had partnered with the University of North Carolina Health Sciences Library, Interlibrary Loan Department, where if either one of our staffs were down for some reason, we would be able to partner with them so they would be able to continue carrying on interlibrary loan, borrowing for each department, which was a great idea. And 15 years ago, and I don't know if we ever even activated activated it at once. It was well done. Melanie Norton, I think she's on this call. She was very involved with that, and we wrote an article and things like that. So traditionally that's the way we had buddy libraries. But what I see a big opportunity now is that we can partner for helping with preparedness purposes. For instance, we could have quarterly Zoom meetings where we could schedule to help each other to keep the planning current. We could conduct tabletop exercises together, and we can share lessons learned. And I know Region 1 is very, very motivated to get disaster preparedness really worked out within the region. And so we're really looking for opportunities, and I think this is a great opportunity. And I'll be turning this over to April again a little bit, and she can continue that conversation. But let's partner with each other. Let's look for like libraries, and the region can help. NNLM can help identify that. I can help identify that, and we can work on this together. We can stay together as a group, and we can really, I think, really promote this and show the world how well libraries can respond to this type of emergency situation in a very clear and very concise way. So, any questions? Let's see what the time is. The time is getting towards the end, so I'm going to stop at this point. And April, unless you have any questions that need to be answered right now.
Oh, one question just came through.
Okay.
Kendra, would it be preferable to partner with another library that is geographically close, academic with public, or similar to
Yes,
academics?
very good question. In the past, we always tried to partner with libraries that were out of our area, and that's when the focus was on response. And so if let's say a library, the University of Virginia might partner with Stanford out in California. Now, I think it might be more important to be local because you have more common situations. And so I'm turning it. You could do both. You could select somebody from outside, and NNLM has several regions, so they can facilitate that type of setup, or you could work with libraries within your region as well. Both have benefits.
Well, thank you very much for that, Dan. And this was a great presentation. um, so, as Dan mentioned, NNLM is working to expand what we call the COOP, the Continuity of Operations Planning, in the regions and libraries. So we can include public academic libraries as well as community-based organizations. And we've actually asked Dan to head our disaster response community of interest. So, yeah, so, NNLM sponsors applications for the Medical Library Association Disaster Information Specialization Certificate. And I can give you a link to that information there. Um, Yeah. So, and we also provide funding and for outreach and additional professional professional development. So, if you are interested in the community of interest, you can email me, and I'm putting my email in the chat. Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to partner with ALA to do something around continuity of operations. Um, so, thank you again, Dan, for a fabulous presentation.
Well,
Um,
thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. And here's my contact information. And please don't hesitate. Contact me. I love to get feedback. I love to get response. I love helping people out. This is really my passion. And if you want to see the slides as well as a link to that one-page plan, and April, I don't know if we can get that URL in there right now. I could just leave it up on the screen, but that will take you to my page,
okay, I
my
can do it.
UVA page, and then at the bottom of that, you
I've
will
got
get a
it.
link. Thank you very much. There it
Thank
is.
you, Rebecca.
You'll get a link to the slides from this presentation as well as the one-page plan. And when you get that one-page plan, it will come in Word format, so you're able to download it, and then you can just plug in the information that's tailored to your library.
Great, great. Okay. Um, Thank you
I
so
also,
much, Dan. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
April, I just want to point out that I've put
Absolutely.
the link to the evaluation in the chat box.
Yes,
That's
yes.
the first step for claiming MLACE. If that bit.ly link, if you're blocked from that, let us know in chat and we'll put the very long link in. So
All
that's
right. Very good. And as a reminder, this recording will be available on the NNLM YouTube channel. It'll be a little bit, but we will let you know when it is available if you want to check out our YouTube channel. There
so
it
I
is.
also want, sorry, I'm interrupting again.
That's okay.
So the very long link that I put in, only part of it is hyperlinked. It's just the way the link is made. So make sure you grab the entire thing. It ends with =0. You need absolutely every piece of that link if you're blocked from bit.ly. And sometimes
Okay.
not sometimes, when you click on links from WebEx, you get this warning page. Don't worry. These are safe links.
Okay. And okay, good. You put the longer link in there. Great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending our webinar today. And thank you so much again, Dan. such a great presentation, and Rebecca, and all of the help. So thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.